Welcome to episode 176 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Catapult Sports' Bo Westover about tracking athlete performance.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host, whose professional sports career was tragically cut short at age 17 due to a lack of ability, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan. You can contact me by multiple means, via Twitter, at Sean Callanan on Instagram, Sean Callanan on Snapchat, or you can try the old-fashioned way, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. That's how you can get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to catch up with and chat with podcast listeners. If I can help you in any way, please reach out. I might be able to help you as a team. I might be able to help you as a league. I might be able to help you as a brand in the space. Or you might be trying to launch a product and I can help you in some way. So the only way I can find out is if you get in touch. So you can get in touch those ways, or you can actually just book in for a phone call. As I said, love talking to listeners. You can book in for a phone call at sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. Really happy to catch up with Bo Westover and the intro about my professional sports career being tragically cut short. That will all be revealed in this episode with Bo Westover from Catapult Sports. Catapult, you will find out about, is a athlete performance tracking, GPS systems, finding out what athletes are doing from a performance point of view. I won't describe it. Bo does a better job of it. And discuss with him on how the business has grown, starting in Australia and then moving globally, and what Bo's been doing over in the US to both grow the brand and grow the penetration of Catapult Sports. So here's my chat with Bo Westover from Catapult Sports. Very happy to have a guest here at the Sports Geek office here at Creative Cubes, Bo Westover, from the Director of Marketing from Catapult Sports. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Pleasure to be here.
So, first of all, for the people who don't know and haven't heard of the Catapult story, because we've got a lot of people who probably work on the digital and the marketing side, but there's a fair few people who are in the geek and the tech side, but also, you know, you guys are more in the high performance, and you're in the operations, you're in the coaching side of sport. Give people a little bit of a background of what Catapult Sports is.
Yeah, so for the layman or the sports fan out there, you might have seen Catapult as the bump at the top of the back on a lot of AFL and NRL players and NBL in Australia. So essentially and traditionally, Catapult's been a wearable technology product for elite athletes.
Yep.
So going into the history a little bit, it was invented in 1999 by our two co-founders, and those guys went on to become our CEO and CTO as a partnership between the Australian Institute of Sport and a research organisation. So it was a pretty innovative thing at the time, and it came off the back of the birth of the AIS, which was really the world's first sports institute that invested in young athletes. So they were looking at new ways to measure athlete performance. They were always using lab-based testing on treadmills and oxygen masks, all that stuff. But they realized that stuff didn't translate to what was actually happening on the field and during competition. So they wanted to take that same testing protocols, but out on the field. So the only way to do that was through wearable technology. Thus, Catapult was born in 1999. It was an exclusive partnership with the Australian Olympic team from then until 2006, when it became a commercial product.
Yep.
At that point, we started getting into more sports. It started as a rowing device, which most people don't know is actually worn on the boat, not on the athletes.
Okay.
And then it quickly got quite small and miniaturized and was put on the athlete's back. And the AFL was really the first team sport we got into. At the time, there was another supplier out there that we eventually acquired called GP Sports, based in Canberra. But yeah, we grew very quickly in the Australian market, work with all the AFL teams now, on a league basis and a team-by-team basis. And yeah, we've grown pretty rapidly around the world since then, in the UK, in the US, and all the rest.
So, yeah, so the device sits on the player in some form and tracks tracks all things from what they're doing on a game day running and speed and all those kind of things?
That's right, yeah. So anything movement-based from a physiological perspective. So speed, distance are the obvious things, jumps, accelerations, decelerations, some more sports sciencey stuff like metabolic power and heart rate variability. Basically, any time the athlete moves any part of his body, the device will pick up that movement with the inertial sensors inside the device and the GPS chip. So coaches are using that data to better understand how hard players are working, so they can quantify whether they're ready for games based on a training output, quantify return to play, so the rehabilitation process, because in the past it was kind of the doctor says, oh yeah, the player looks fit, let's get him back out there, but there's no real way to know if he's performing at the same way he was pre-injury. So now they have hard data. They can say, now he's back at the baseline, he's ready to get back out there.
So very much is all about tracking the more and more of the high performance and the sports science is coming into that club sport, and knowing how so things like that we've only come in because of things like Catapult are how far players are running during a game, their acceleration, and how long they're running at a top speed. All of that stuff is all new information for the sports science teams, but then also the new age coaches that are looking at this data and deciding how they do matchups and things on the data.
That's right. Yeah, you mentioned sports scientists specifically. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing, because sports scientists can't do their job without technologies like Catapult, and Catapult doesn't exist without the professional sports science. So they're typically our user around the world. High performance manager, sports scientist, strength coach a lot in the US, but absolutely, it's all about quantifying the performance of the athlete. We're getting more and more engagement with coaches as well, so not just on the performance side. So they're looking at how to plan out trainings for the following week, and knowing when to push athletes a little bit more, when to back off. So it is becoming more of a performance ecosystem around the performance metrics that we're getting from our technology. We're going into new technologies that I'll dig into a little bit more, I imagine, in the next hour. But it is it's really changed a lot in the last 10 years, and teams are relying on it more.
So take us, so it starts as out of the Australian Institute of Sport, and then evolves in 2006 and starts being used professionally in the leagues here in Australia. So how do you? What did you do to make the jump out of Australia into other sports and into other countries? Yeah,
good question. So AFL obviously lends itself perfectly to GPS technology. It's a huge field. There's 36 players out there. There's obviously structures and strategy in place, but probably not as regimented as like an NFL team or a basketball team. So it's a little bit more haphazard out there. So there was a need and a desire to quantify what was happening on the field.
Because it is a three, again, if you haven't watched AFL, go to watch AFL, and you can watch it internationally, but it's a 360-degree game. They're not running routes like they do in NFL, and they're not running set plays and pick and rolls that you would do in basketball. They are doing bits of it, but it's the whole field is always in play, and they're all it's a constant movement type of sport. So being able to quantify that is so tough before the tech came out.
That's right, yeah. So constant movement, constant action, 360, like you said, high contact. So there a lot of hitting, a lot of tackling, and an amazing amount of running. So they're covering 10 miles, 16 Ks every game. Some players more, and obviously the bigger guys a little bit less. So because we quickly started working with every team, and Australia was always seen as a bit of a sports science leader globally, there was a lot of guys coming over from the Premier League and NBA teams, NFL teams, one to visit their AIS, but also to visit with AFL teams just to see what they were doing because of that thought leadership perception. And all these teams were seeing Catapult being used real time. So we'd have guys come out from the Premier League and then go back and say, oh, there's this cool technology being used in Australia. Maybe we should look at this. So it sort of grew organically from there.
Because their whole coaching, sports science, high performance fraternity, they're all looking for an edge.
Absolutely.
Like they're all looking, and they're not, they do share and, share best practice and stuff in different leagues, but they're all looking for their edge in their team.
That's right, yeah.
So it only takes one to go, well, we're going to use this technology to start tracking to better understand, injury maintenance or player performance and all of that kind of thing. And then it's a bit of keeping up with the Joneses. So it's really good from you, from your point of view, from a marketing point of view, because there's the on-field competitiveness sort of says, well, they've got that new tech, it's doing this, well, we want it as well? Was it a bit organically like that for Catapult internationally?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The keeping up with the Joneses is a huge part of it, especially in the US. If 3 NBA teams use it, all of a sudden you've got 20 NBA teams using it because they don't want to be the ones that aren't using it.
Yep.
And it works well for us because the more teams that are using the technology, the better the data is because we're using a lot of machine learning algorithms. So the more data we're pumping into the back end, the more accurate it's getting in the front end. So, absolutely grew organically. The big leagues picked it up first, and luckily, I guess for us, it's usually the big teams in the big league. So when you get the Chelseas and the Real Madrids and the San Antonio Spurs and New York Giants, when those guys are the innovators, it's pretty easy for it to spread pretty quickly. So, and that's kind of what happened with Catapult.
And so then where did you get into the Catapult story?
Yeah, good question. So 2006 was when it was commercialized. We remained pretty small from 2006 to 2012, which is when I started. So I joined in October 2012, just over 5 years ago. And I think we only had 14 or 15 staff at the time, still very, very small company.
And still probably hardware and still working on the tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the implementation of the product and the back end and getting that piece in.
Yeah, so very much a GPS product that happened to have a software layer behind it. So the office was on top of a coffee shop in South Melbourne, really small operation. We had one person in the UK, one person in the US. They were both Australian sports scientists that we just flew over there, basically said, set yourselves up and see if you can sell this thing. They both did fantastic. They both ended up back in the Melbourne office and are still with the company. So I joined in, October 2012. First marketing person. Everyone else in the company was either a sports scientist or an engineer. And then we had one finance person, so very small operation. Didn't really know where to start, to be honest. There was just so much could do with the brand and
you already had all these
perspective.
You already had all these great clients.
That's
and
right.
wins. It's not like you were starting from, hey, Bo, here's a product. Can you go out to this space and tell them about it? You've got all this organic chatter. You've got this, you've got, the money ball sort of story that's coming along, in different sports and analytics and advanced stats and diving more on numbers.
Yep.
That's when you came in, that everyone was in that space. So it was like, well, what's our edge? How do we move into that space? And the whole tracking stuff was a big part of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a huge convergence of a number of waves coming together. Sports science was exploding in Australia and it was becoming a big export for Australia into other markets, not just for technologies, but for people as well. There's a lot of Australian sports scientists getting jobs in Great Britain and the US. And then the sports analytics piece on the back of Moneyball and a few other initiatives. That was really growing in the US and sort of starting to move over to Australia and the UK. So we're kind of riding these two waves, analytics and sports science, into each other at the perfect time. And then obviously Fitbit was doing really well at the time. Wearables was sort of a hot topic, the quantified self, all that stuff. So we were just all of that for elite sport, which is obviously a sexy market. So the one thing I stuck my teeth into really early was PR. So even though I was in Australia, I put probably 80, 90% of my time into US PR. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. every day just to call US reporters and say, hey, did you know this NFL team is wearing a GPS device in training? And it's hard for them not to write a story about that. So I had a pretty easy job. I worked my ass off, but it just kind of all came together. And so I was in the Melbourne office for 2 years and the opportunity presented itself to move over to the US. We were at about probably 30 or 40 people by that stage. So growing steadily, but not really taking off. But my boss said, you're doing most of your work in the US anyway, might as well set yourself up over there. We had 3 or 4 people scattered around the country, an office in Dallas with one person. So my boss just said, pick a location, set yourself up, create as much buzz as you can about the brand. So moved over to San Francisco, was only there for 3 weeks, ended up moving to Dallas to join the office. And at that time, we hired Brian Kopp, who was the president of the North American region. He was based in Chicago, which is how I ended up in Chicago. And he was the one that really grew our brand and our team over there. And we went from 4 or 5 people to 30 people pretty quickly and established an office. And he joined from Stats LLC, where he'd just gotten a league-wide deal in the NBA with the SportView system. So obviously knew the analytics space really, really well. We'd already partnered with Stats with that product in the NBA. So knew everyone, brought the team together. And so spent the next 3 and a bit years in the Chicago office working on our brand over there.
So what's been the marketing focus for Catapult? Because the PR piece does well to get the name out there and get more people talking about it, and you've got a really strong ties both from your staff and the brand in the professional sport. So what are your goals from a marketing point of view? Because you're not selling individual units, you're doing deals with teams and subscriptions with teams. That's the product base. So what are you looking to build out those B2B and then have your sales guys come in, or where's that marketing mix for you guys?
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey from a marketing perspective. So my first 4 years at the company, I was the entire marketing team. So we had business development managers scattered around in the regions. So I'd work really closely with those sales guys. But from a marketing perspective, it was just me. And then last year, about this time last year, we really started to invest in our brand and started to delve into new products, new markets, and sort of the layer underneath professional and elite sports, so sort of the amateur sub-elite market. So the marketing team as it stands today is 18 people, so it's grown dramatically in the last year. But I would say in the early days, we went pretty quickly from PR to more of a community workshop focus.
Yep.
So once we started to bring on these big clients, particularly in the NFL and NBA, which is my focus over there, was how do we get these guys in one room together, get a few other influencers and people that are on the cusp of buying the technology. And the perfect example was a few years ago, we held our first ever workshop in Hawaii for all our college football and NFL clients. And so we had 25 people in a room in Hawaii. People still talk about it. Obviously, it's Hawaii, so you can't go too far wrong. But it's just getting everyone together, talking about how they're leveraging the data, where they see the future of the technology.
And it also it helps spark discussions of, well, we're using your product. This, you want them to be buying in on the product roadmap.
That's right.
And hey, these are the features, or this is how we're using it, or this is what we'd like to see. That kind of thing that gets them further invested. Like, marketing is, hey, yeah, we can go get new customers. But if you deepen the ties with your current customers and then they become advocates because they're the ones that you're tapping on the shoulder to say, oh, can you please talk to them and tell them how great the experience is? Yeah. Like, that's just as important.
Absolutely, yeah. So that event, it started out as a client appreciation event, which obviously we got a lot out of too from a product feedback perspective, but we've really grown those around the world. We hold about 20 of those in various regions around the world now. Opened them up a little bit more so there are more sales opportunities, but that's been a huge part of our growth from a B2B perspective. And then we've really focused, as I said, on the brand the last year. So if you've been on our website, catapultsports.com, we've had a full rebrand in the last couple of months. So new website, new social, all that stuff. And that's really been stemmed from our graphic design team in London. And we're really investing heavily in the brand as we move into lower end markets. So as I said, that the amateur market, high school sports in the US, and into the prosumer market, which I'll probably dig into a little bit more as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an interesting space. One of the things that comes up, and the whole player tracking thing is, it'd been a discussion of the last couple of years at conferences like Seat and stuff, where you've got the tech has to be rolled out to be able to track the SportsView system and that kind of thing, and wearables overall. We've seen the NBA go backwards and forwards with players wanting to wear wearables. There's still the I guess the question around like whose data, like from a player team point of view, that the industry overall is still coming to terms with a little bit. Where do you guys sit on that as a overall? Because you're just, hey, we're just timing things and tracking things, but the whole who owns the data, the player versus team versus league, aggregators, that kind of thing. Where does that fit for you guys?
Yeah, so that's a tough question to answer because no one has really figured that out.
And it wasn't saying, hey, please give me the official stance, but it's like it's something that, as the quantified self, from an athlete perspective, as they start, doing it, and they're doing it for their own performance. You see that LeBron James is spending $1 million to maintain his body, and some of that is, yoga and diet and all that, but he's doing all of this tracking. So he's owning his own data and he's using tech to do it. It's just something that, it's something that over the next 2-5 years that we're going to figure out how the tech can help, and then, where the data sits.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess the one thing I can say is that Catapult has the rights to all the data that we're collecting, which obviously rights and ownership are pretty different things. But that's kind of being figured out, I guess, by league basis. And in the US, it's a little bit different because you've got the Players Association and the league have to agree for something to come into place. And Catapult's a little bit unique in that even though LeBron might wear our technology, it's the strength coach or the performance manager at the Cleveland Cavaliers who's the actual client or the user for Catapult. So, so LeBron's wearing the device, but that doesn't mean he's owning the data. It's we have rights to the data, the team has rights to the data. So a lot of that stuff will get figured out in time, and it's the same in a lot of industries, I suppose. But I guess very early days for that conversation.
But it is completely, and that's it's been a conversation and a constant, asterisk that's thrown up in these kind of panels when you're having that kind of discussion. The other thing you were talking about is, you're really strong in the pro team and the elite level space. Started the Olympics at the big professional leagues, but as we've seen with all of the wearable sort of tech that what Fitbit's done, what Nike tried to do, and then got in and got out. The lower level sports and like you said, the prosumer space. Where does that as an opportunity lie for you guys?
Yeah, so that's a really exciting one for us because obviously elite sport is a massive, massive market, and we've done a lot of research into it, and we have about 85% market share into elite sport from a wearables perspective, but that whole market is only 10% tapped, so there's huge greenfield there. But having said that, there's even more opportunity at the next level down, so that amateur sort of prosumer market. So last July, I believe it was, we acquired an Irish company called PlayerTech.
Yep.
We relaunched that product earlier this year in March or April as PlayerTech by Catapult. But that's kind of our amateur product as it stands today. So there's a team element. So we're selling those directly to high schools in the US and academies in the UK and amateur footy clubs in Australia and everything in between. And then there's also a consumer element to that. So anyone can go to playertech.com and buy a device. And when they go play five-a-side soccer with their mates, they can get all their data and can compare it with a Premier League player. So anyone can do that today. That's our current offering for that market. But what we're doing, I guess, moving forward is figuring out how to make this a mass appeal product where similar product, I don't want to say similar products, but other wearables might not have succeeded, like the Fitbits and the Jawbones and everything. So how can we leverage data science and machine learning and the data we're getting off all these athletes and find some actionable insights? So it's actually interesting when you go play soccer or footy or basketball with your friends or with your team that takes it seriously. How do we capture data that's relevant to you and inspires you to actually make a difference moving forward? So that's kind of the next frontier for Catapult from a prosumer perspective. We've got some exciting stuff coming out early 2018 that will be heavy in that space. But as I said, huge opportunity.
Yeah, that effectively takes the couch to 5K type people into that space to go, whether it's what I'm doing from a game point of view, but the other opportunity potentially is that whole player identification space that as more people are using it, they're going, that data will peak to say, oh, this person has is in the top percentile for this age range, that kind of thing. That becomes, again, the sports science boffins are sitting there going, wow, we've never had this data. that's where we want, that's where it could be really advantageous to entire countries and that kind of thing when you're looking at identifying athletes and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. We kind of call that the player passport. So every professional athlete starts somewhere as an amateur athlete. So if we have the elite end covered, which we do today, and start moving downstream, all of a sudden you're getting an athlete's data from the time they're 10 years old through to when they're a professional athlete. And that's a really interesting story. And then you can leverage that data to find the next superstar athletes because you know what that trajectory is. So that's a super interesting space that's going to unfold in the next couple of years as we collect more and more data.
And it does fit in probably more so in the football academies, like in the soccer in Europe, where they do – and they have been, signing those 10, 12, 11-year-olds and putting them in the academies.
Yeah.
The more data they're getting as they're going through that process, the more informed they are of which kids are going to make it or which kids potentially are showing the signs. Now, it doesn't, I was at a sports tech meetup the other day and it's like all the numbers say they're the, terrific athletes, but where does the data show us they've got feel for the game and those kind of things? So there's a bit of, again, discussion on you track everything and this is the best athlete that you'll ever see, but someone slower, fatter, might have a better feel for the game. It would be good to be able to put the devices in the time machine and put them on the Maradonas of the world.
Yep.
In a football sense, known as one of the best players ever, but how would he have tracked on with a Catapult device on it? So
yeah, a little bit closer to home. Warwick Giddy for the Melbourne Tigers player. I always think about his Catapult data. Not the fastest guy or the strongest guy, but he just understood the game so well. He was always in the right position, always made the right play. So his data wouldn't have been impressive, but a lot of things you can't quantify at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's where I think it is a combination of, and that's where we're seeing the advanced stat stuff saying, things advanced plus minus and stuff like that say, well, when he's on the floor, his physical data that we're capturing isn't out of the place, but the rebounding percentage goes up because he's blocking out in the right spot or that kind of thing. I think that kind of data is starting to bubble up to say, well, there must, he's like a glue guy, right? There's now stats that are starting to show the eye test that says, well, they are better when he's on the court. It's starting to show there. So you did. It was a beautiful segue in there to mention the Melbourne Tigers because you've known me or at least known of me back in the Melbourne Tigers days. So you want to give people a little bit of history. Your Melbourne Tigers history, and then we can reminisce about Tigers years of old.
Yeah, absolutely. So my father was the assistant coach of the Melbourne Tigers from 1992 until about 2006, I think it was. He actually played for the Tigers the very first year they were in the NBL in 84, a couple of years before I was born even. So I grew up from the time I was born around the Melbourne Tigers. My dad ended up being the head coach for, I think it was almost 6 years in the end.
After a very long apprenticeship under Lindsay Gaze, the doyen of the Melbourne Tigers.
Yeah. So his first 4 years, we went to the grand final. His first 4 years, won 2 of the championships. Didn't last as long as he would have liked as head coach of the Tigers, but Tigers have been a huge part of our family from my entire life. So, the reason I know you so well, and you probably don't remember me at all, is I was a little kid sitting across the hoodlums at every Melbourne Tigers home game. I think it was Flinders Park even.
It was back at, it was before it was even Rod Laver Arena. Me and my friends, then young 20-something university students. We were doing fan engagement before the word was even invented.
That's right.
We would make serious fools of ourselves. We got the Mexican Wave happening at the tennis centre. Got 15,000 people up and about, so it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's now what we call fan engagement. What I might do when this episode comes out, we recently found an interview that we did with Paul Kuiper on Hoops TV, which is quite embarrassing because I've got long hair and all of that kind of stuff. But these are the things that I do for the podcast. I mean, to give you even, so you think that's potentially where we've crossed paths and where we remember you. I actually go further back. So I'm from Ballarat. So Al was also coach of the Ballarat Miners. So before I was a Tigers hoodlum, we ran the Gilby fan club. So Craig Gilbert was we used to ref basketball all day, then we'd go to the Miners games. And so I knew Al from then, and he even snuffed out my basketball career. I tried out for the Ballarat Nuggets as a 17-year-old, and he cut me in the tryout. So I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all because I really did not have enough talent. So it's good when I sort of reached out and said, "Hey, we'll do the pod," and he goes, "Oh, yeah, I remember from the Tigers hoodlums days." I'm like, "Yeah, that does age me, but that's fine." I do, absolute blast, 15,000 people. And watching Andrew Gaze and Lenar Copeland throwing alley oops. It was
the good old days.
What a time to be alive, and it's actually good to see the NBL coming back and getting good crowds and stuff like that. So it's good to go down memory lane, and so it leads me into, as I try to unlock my PC, and I should know these questions anyway, the closing 5 questions. So do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
It probably would have been a Melbourne Tigers game. I'm just trying to think when. The first one I vividly remember was the 1992 Grand Final. The Southeast Melbourne Magic beat the Tigers by 36.
Yep.
In Game 3. I remember being in the locker room after the game. And
I don't want to. I scrubbed that from memory. I don't remember that. I remember being there.
The most somber room I've ever been in. I remember Dave Simmons and Andrew Gaze and Copes. I remember everyone. It just looked like someone had died in the room.
Yeah. So Dave Simmons is, for the listeners here, is Ben Simmons' dad.
Correct.
Who's doing okay in the NBA.
Doing pretty well. Yeah. That would have been probably just before Ben was born. But I remember Ben as a baby, and I helped him learn how to walk actually around the Tigers locker rooms, which is quite funny. But that's probably my first sports game memory. Yeah. So they were good times, good rivalry. Me and the guys, we recently we went to the Tigers Hall of Fame. We've actually I've got the balls there signed by Al and Mark Bradke and all the hoodlums. Then signed the ball. We actually got a good memory of '93. So in '93, the Tigers went up against the Perth Wildcats, and they won Game 1. We all went. We didn't go to Perth, but we watched Game 2. I think it was in a hall in South Yarra somewhere. Our memories now say it was a 2-game sweep because we don't remember Game 2 at all. We were so pumped, and we might have had a few too many beers. So for us, we just remember Games 1 and Games 3. We don't remember anything from Game 2 at all. So you must have been lucky both, seeing a lot of sport with your dad being a coach, but then, being in the US and mixing with all these teams. Is there a go-to or a favourite food memory when you go to a stadium and go, "Oh, I've got to have that," or do you just have a staple, or you just go with a particular food? There's a taco place in Chicago called Big Star. They do fantastic tacos and margaritas. And the United Center last year opened up a Big Star inside the stadium. So Bulls and Blackhawks games, getting Big Star tacos, that'd be my highlight.
That's good. It's good. Don't mind a taco at the game. Now, what's the first app you open in the morning?
Good question. Probably my emails, which is a bit boring, so I'll give it another answer. The New York Times app.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I pay for that service, so I feel like I need to maximize my use of it. So, I always start reading the news on the New York Times.
Very, very good. One of the only media organisations to actually make a paywall work.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Kudos to them. If you were to point podcast listeners to someone that you read or follow or admire, whether it be an author or someone who's posting content that you think, hey, you should follow this person and check out what they're doing, who would you suggest?
This is a bit boring and predictable since I'm a marketer, but Seth Godin. So get his emails every day, read everything he does. I think I've read all of his books. I did his marketing summer seminar recently.
Yep.
Fantastic insights.
He's so prolific. He makes you just feel... Oh my God!
It's a bit depressing.
He just produced so much content. And it's also good.
Yeah.
But I've heard, I've listened to him, and he doesn't do podcasts that often. So when you do see him or see that he's on one, it's absolutely top notch, and it is like from his content. He's just like, I just produce it every day. It's like something it's just
what he does.
It's,
Yeah,
it's his breathing.
Yeah, the marketing seminar I did recently, he just do like a 20-minute face to camera with no edits, and everything was like insightful and amazing. Like I don't know how the guy does it, but I highly recommend him if you don't follow what he does.
Yeah, completely agree. All good reads. I've actually had a couple of people that I know also do his alt MBA and speak really highly of it. It's super intensive in that I think it's 6 weeks. And you sort of have a cohort of people that you do group projects with, and you've got to be committed to, setting this certain time. So it does, it says super incentive, but everyone who's done it says absolutely amazing. Yeah. So, you can't go wrong following Seth. And then the last one is Kevin Durant style, who says, hey, you're the real MVP. Is there a social media platform that, and you can answer this too, I always ask it 2 ways. What's your social media platform MVP for you? And then potentially what's the one that's working the best for Catapult?
So I'll answer the second question first. So I run Catapult's Twitter account, and that's probably our most successful one because it seems like that's what all the strength coaches and sports scientists are on. And a lot of guys out there making a brand for themselves as sports scientists, which is fantastic to see. And we're kind of tapping into that, I guess, a little bit as well. From a personal perspective, I'm probably into Instagram the most at the moment.
Yep.
I feel like a young millennial. Well, it's actually Snapchat as well. Instagram and Snapchat probably a tie, and I blame my wife for that. She's all over both of them, so I feel like I have to be on there to keep up. It's
always an interesting one, especially from for a lot of people. Ask this. A lot of people say, I still like Twitter from a news point of view and that kind of thing. And, I've used Twitter and built it out to do that, connecting with people. But now I'm only finding certain niches that still exists. It's getting like when I started and, I can rattle off all the people that I met via the sports biz hashtag that are around, and I did via Twitter, and I really feel for the people who are coming out of university now or want to get into the space because it's so noisier.
Yep.
So I do like it when I hear that there's still good pockets. And I know there is because it's, it's niches upon niches. Mm-hmm. Twitter is still massive in esports and gamers, and that's their primary platform. And so, sports science and that, it's good to hear that. And again, it's a filter thing. You've just got to, delete a whole bunch of people to start getting that noise ratio right.
It is, yeah. You need to invest a bit of time to make sure you're getting the most out of it. And I don't know if it was the smartest move on their behalf to lengthen the amount of
the
content you can share. Yeah,
now the 280. Yeah, it doesn't help the noise problem.
No, yeah, and they had a nice little USP going on. So now it feels like it's open slather, and you can say what you want about Donald Trump's tweets, but I don't know if it's a great thing that he has twice the amount of.
Well, that's the thing. There was talent in the succinctness of 140.
It's a bit of an art form, wasn't it?
And hey, can I say that in this amount? And I think it made, I think I've said it before, made me a better writer, and someone who's a terrible writer, but at least gets you to the point, stops the waffle, says the person that has a 45-minute podcast. But, but it does get you to the point. Now, I sort of seen it and I haven't made a statement. I was like, the internet hates change. For mine, at least Twitter is trying to do something in changing it up. I still think there is stuff that has, bubbling up. Like I do like the stuff you've missed and that because it's actually quite relevant. So I'm like, let's just give me more of that. Mm-hmm. But then making it easier to go, I want to look at. So if I was wanting to be in that space, is there a hashtag that they're aggregating around in the sports science space, or how do you get into that space?
Yeah, not really. It's probably more you just have to know who to follow, and there are a few very research heavy publications and research journals that have published lists of the people to follow in sports science, which definitely helps. And it's always good to see a lot of our clients are on those lists. So, no hashtags really.
And that's the, me being the power user and people using it early and going, I know what a hashtag is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's a really key component of what Twitter is, but there's new people coming on, they don't know it, and it makes it harder for someone to go, and that's the issue. That to me, that's the onboarding issue. Oh, what are you interested in? And they, for a long while went, okay, here's all the celebrities and athletes. It's like, well, that's what media has given us forever.
Yeah.
I actually want to connect with people who execute in the sports tech space or the high performance space. Tell me how to get to those people.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you still have to be an advanced user to get into that space. That's the bit that Twitter, I think, that still needs to solve.
Yep.
And they have to steal the stuff that Facebook's done. Like, oh, Bo, you know Sean, you should follow him. Oh, yeah, I do. Well, I will. That kind of stuff. We've seen you've been talking about this. You should follow these people. Because what I do ask when I'm talking to people about Twitter, I say, yep, I still use it, and people might complain. It's not the same. It's like, when was the last time you went and followed someone new? Because people go, you know what I am? I'm happy. I'm here with the people I know. And so they don't go out to go and follow new people.
That's
and
true,
so, I did it, 18 months ago when I started investigating the esports space. I go, cool, I'm going to follow a whole bunch of people in the esports space, gamers and owners and that. And boom, my feed changed. Right. And because I'm like, they look really active. And it's like, well, is the algorithm, which is kicked in, is that kicked in? Or, it's a real effort. So, for mine, if you just go and follow 10 of your feed completely changes. But at the moment, it's all on the user.
That's right.
And unfortunately, the user's not that smart.
Yeah. It is very much a blank slate, and you have to figure out how to use that blank
people
slate.
go, oh, my feed's terrible. It's like, well, you followed all those people.
Yeah, it's up to you. You can change that.
Like I did notice someone mention, they said, oh, my 2017's been a lot different. Here's the words I've muted.
Oh, right.
Right? And then muted all the words that people are complaining about.
Ah, interesting.
They go, anyone tweets Trump, muted. Kim Kardashian West, muted. And they just don't get anything. And so it's complete. But again, it's still a power user piece to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So to wrap up, where can people find you on the internet, connect with you, reach out to you, and Catapult?
Well, funnily enough, I'm all over social media, but only through Catapult channels. So I'm not big on social myself. So Facebook is probably the best.
Yep.
I do have a Twitter account that I don't use. So Facebook or LinkedIn, just Bowden Westover.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. Thanks, Sean.
Want to start driving more revenue from digital? Go to sportsgeekcampaigns.com.
Thanks again to Bo Westover from Catapult Sports. Please connect with him on LinkedIn. There'll be links in the show notes if you want to get in touch, find out what he's doing. If you're in that high-performance space and work on that side of the business, you would have heard of Catapult Sports. Please get in touch. From my point of view, just a quick letting you know that if you're listening to this episode prior to Christmas or just after Christmas, it's a bit of an alert. I will be in Europe post-Christmas. I'm going to be spending New Year's Eve in Paris. I'm going to be in France for a week and then heading up to Belgium for a couple of days and in Amsterdam for a couple of days and then a couple of days in Copenhagen. So if you're in that part of the world, I'm going to put this sort of alert out on a few of my channels. If you're in that part of the world or you know someone in that part of the world that you think I should meet, please either get in touch with me, Sean Callanan, on all channels, or Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Please connect me with people you think I should connect with. And I'm more than happy to do a few speaking opportunities, whether it's internally to your team or league, to talk to you about the latest trends in digital, potentially do some workshops and review what you're doing from a content point of view. If there's a meetup in town or you've got a few friends that want to meet up and catch up and you are a listener, the offer still stands. I'm more than happy to buy listeners a beer. And also I'm hoping to secure a few interviews while I'm in Europe. So if you're in that part of the world and you think we can meet up and connect, please get in touch. Because as I've said, I have been getting it recently, people asking me what I do outside of podcasting, and a lot of the time it's actual work and working on client projects, whether it's doing content audits, reviewing what they're doing on a platform point of view, helping them with their rate card, helping them drive more cheeks in the seats from a ticketing and data acquisition point of view. So again, if you really if you want my help, or if you want our help from a team point of view, if my team can help your team, please get in touch. But thank you again for listening to the podcast, and for those of you who've left a review on iTunes, I very much appreciate it. Until next time, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join over 1,000 sports business executives in Sports Biz Slack. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack. Please share your fave episodes of Sports Geek on LinkedIn. Be sure to tag Sean Callanan.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.
Want to chat with Sean? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.